Saturday morning, I wake up to my cousin calling me, telling me that he won.
I happened to be scrolling on Twitter because of an alert, and I saw her tweet that said, "Ding dong, the witch is dead."
Three friends text me in all caps, Biden finally won.
I'm really curious to see how everything pans out.
Hi, I'm Greg, and I am your progressive commentator.
Hi, and I'm Jesse Espitia, a political pundit and sports editor for SAC Media.
Hi, I'm Isaac Lee. I'm photography editor, and I am your moderate commentator.
I'm Katie Pretty. I'm the managing editor for SAC Media, and I'm a conservative.
And I'm Mani Noe, and I'm the moderator. Okay. Y'all, it's been a
We're
week.
all over the place today.
Welcome to another episode of Digestible Discourse. Today we'll be talking about our reactions to the election. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to start off and ask you guys to do a sort of 30-second lightning round about how you felt on Saturday when it was officially announced that Joe Biden was projected the winner of the presidential election. So Greg, let's go.
So during the entire week of election week, I was extremely sleep deprived. And so every night I would just fall asleep on my couch while the TV was going. Like my TV was on for like 4 days straight. And Saturday morning, I wake up to my cousin calling me, telling me that he won. And I was like, what? What? I literally cried. And then right afterwards, I had to get ready for my doctor's appointment. But yeah, that's basically what happened. And I was thrilled.
Okay, Jesse, go.
Well, as I woke up on Saturday, if that was, I don't even recall the day because it felt like a very long and grueling week. However, how I found out was our advisor and journalism professor, Tony Albertson. I happened to be scrolling on Twitter because of an alert, and I saw her tweet that said, "Ding dong, the witch is dead." And I was like, oh, what's going on here? Of course, I then find out that Joe Biden, the election was being called for him. So I run out of my room to go wake up my mother, and she was in the shower. And as I knock on her door, she was willing to come out and came out in her towel to watch the news like everybody else. So it was just a pretty memorable moment for me.
Okay, great. Isaac?
For me, I think I remember waking up and my friends, I had like three friends text me in all caps, Biden finally won. And I think for the whole week, it felt kind of like I was holding my breath. It was like this like suffocating air in my room where like I didn't want to like exist. Like I remember I tried to sleep more that week than any time in my life because I didn't want to like sit through the grueling like process of like trying to figure out if Biden was gonna win or not. So like when I woke up on Saturday, it was like cold. It was like a nice day, and like I was like, wow, it's like a breath of fresh air for me.
Okay, and Katie?
Yeah, I don't remember what I was doing when I found out, just because I know I was getting the notifications like throughout all of it. So I feel like to me, I kind of noticed more slowly like everything that was going on. But I mean, yeah, I think it's really interesting, like the process of everything that happened. And I'm really curious to see how everything pans out in the following months.
All right, so with that, this is Wednesday, November 11th, 1 week and 1 day after the election, but just several days after it's been announced that Biden has unseated an incumbent president. And that's the first time that has happened in 30 years since Bill Clinton unseated George H.W. Bush. And in the last century alone, only 4 presidents, if you think about it, have lost re-election. And that was, in addition to H.W., that was Jimmy Carter, that was Gerald Ford, that was Herbert Hoover. So, I mean, this was a very, very historic moment. And, for myself, I remember what I was doing when I found out. And for every morning, I wake up to my radio alarm on NPR. And just like Greg, just like the rest of you, I couldn't sleep that entire week. I just had, was flipping through channels, just trying to see if they updated anything. And with every like key state alert thing, where they just update how many votes have been counting. And that was so annoying to me. And it was just frustrating. But when it finally happened, like I admit I was taking a shower. I'd brought my phone in the shower, listening to the radio, and then NPR announced that AP had projected it. So that's what I was doing. And I just remember the rest of the day watching on TV a lot of the celebrations happening. And I thought that, like, no matter like what side you're on, I feel like that's such a crazy thing to see, that sort of enthusiasm for a president. So yeah, it's a really historic moment. So next thing I want to talk about is what this election means to each of you. And we discussed before how differently it impacts you, whether personally or someone you know. So I want to go around and ask you guys what you're hoping will change and how this might affect you personally or someone you know personally.
I'll go ahead and start. So, as a progressive, this means the world to me, but also as a student, Chuck Schumer, I want to say hours after Biden was, called as president-elect, he went on Twitter saying that the president-elect needs to sign an executive order canceling $50,000 of one student debt um, within his first 100 days. And as someone who is finishing Mount SAC and might be, transferring soon, that means taking out some loans. Knowing that kind of put a lot of weight off my chest about transferring, because the average someone owes is about $60,000. So literally going from 60,000 to now owing only 10, that is insane. And so this is going to be life changing for a lot of people who are in student debt. I believe nationally it's $1 trillion, over $1 trillion of student loan debt. So yeah, that's going to be life changing, y'all.
Okay, yeah. So for me, it's kind of like student related too. I think as a student, like graduating high school and becoming a college freshman, like I think that this time exposed me a lot to like how badly Trump was handling like the coronavirus specifically. And it was actually really upsetting to me because I remember getting out March 13th. They that was like the very last day I set foot on my high school campus, and they said, "Oh, you'll be back in 5 weeks, no biggie." And I think every week that passed between then and like the end of the 5 weeks, I was thinking, oh, like we're gonna like get this coronavirus stuff underway. The director of the CDC has said that if everyone was stringent about mask wearing policies, then we could get the virus under control in 8 weeks. So I had a lot of hopes for, graduating high school and like beginning my freshman year of college. And I think every time like I scroll through my gallery, I like see this patch during May where there's normally lots of graduation photos, and it was supposed to be like my graduation, my like freshman year. And I know like that sounds kind of selfish, but at the same time, like I think it's an experience I'll never get back. So I'm kind of glad Trump is, for the most part, out of the picture, because like I don't want anyone else to have to go through that.
Definitely. And for somebody like myself, who has strong roots with like Latinx family members and undocumented family members and friends, somebody who's had an in-depth look into what that type of life entails. For me, I think that was the biggest moment, especially when I saw somebody in my community who I know it is undocumented. I saw how happy they were, and to know that they literally had no voice in this election, but their futures were hanging in the balance. For me, it just opened my eyes to just how big this election was. And all of our DACA students as well, I know that this has been pressing 4 years for them, just with all of the rhetoric that's been coming out of the White House. I've had the honor and privilege of interviewing a few DACA students who've talked about what it's like. And we also interviewed some people for an elections reaction on our SAC Media website. And they talk about how the issue of immigration and the fear of deportation was something that was on their minds as they were headed to the voting centers this year. So For me, I think that was the biggest issue. There's a bit of a relief. The temperature, like Joe Biden says, the temperature is being brought down, and hopefully now there'll be more laws and things passed to support our DACA community at Mount Sac.
So I think as far as like what it means to me, I think a lot of our freedoms were kind of on the line. Everything that's kind of guaranteed by the Constitution were very up in the air with everything, and what the future of like freedom of speech will look like under under new government officials. That's kind of something that concerns me with everything going on. But hey, I mean, I would much rather Biden prove me wrong than prove me right, because then that's just gonna end poorly for everyone.
Katie, not to put you on the spot, but I wanted to give you some time here to explain to us or describe to us, you being, the sole conservative here, what it actually like means to conservatives and to fellow Trump supporters, because I don't have anyone like that in my life. A lot of us don't have people that support Trump. I mean, obviously you guys are out there, but for those of us who don't know, like, what is it that you want us to understand about this loss to you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, I do think it's like I was saying before, everything that's been going on is very concerning. I think the way that it's been handled, as far as a lot of Trump's tweets and a lot of things that are like how he's been sort of treated with what he's allowed to say, and I think it's so think of it like, to me, the way I look at it is the leader of the free world is being censored. And I think that's very concerning, like the way that that's all being handled. And that kind of leads me to question more, what are we allowed to say and how limited is our free speech already? And how would that continue with someone who's not being so forceful and against kind of that censorship, someone who wouldn't be fighting against that. And so I think that's what worries me a lot is, like you said, there's not too many conservative, I think, especially on a college campus, that I can't freely speak what I think at all without getting a massive amount of hate. I can post a single thing on Instagram. I have posted something before on Instagram, and that picture went around Twitter and people were calling me all these bad names. It's very common. It's very, very common. I've had so many people say, like, you can't be a conservative, like you can't say this stuff. And so it's concerning with now that we don't have like a leader that will kind of guide everyone and allow for you to have a little bit of freedom of speech. It worries me what's going to happen, like the future there.
I mean, just to clarify, the reason that Twitter is marking his tweets is because they're false. That's the sole reason why he's sort of being flagged, because whatever he's tweeting, and it's not all of them, I go through his page too to see what's being flagged and what's not. And it's when he spreads misinformation about voter fraud that is concerning. I feel like that should be more concerning, the misinformation that's being spread, than the actual concern of freedom of speech. Because obviously Twitter, Facebook, all these platforms, they are platforms for everyone to express their opinion, and they do, and no one can really stop that, because that that would be infringement of freedom of speech. So what can Biden do, or what would you like to see Biden do so he's not, I guess, infringing on that right that you're concerned about?
So I would like to backtrack a little bit as far as what's allowed on all these platforms, because even the CEO of Twitter said that conservatives who work directly under him are concerned that they aren't allowed to freely express their beliefs because people get upset. And that's something that I was saying is what is allowed to be said and what isn't. Because I think when it comes to government, I think there's a lot going on that journalists are kind of kept out of. I think with the long history of everything in the US and the press, I think that there's probably a lot that we don't know, that we like, there's not really, like, we're not a part of all these like meetings going on, like journalists aren't kind of in all of that. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are these platforms and what are they allowed to like stop that we don't know about, that they're kind of just stopping the spread of that information. So I'm curious, like if someone says like, oh, that's misinformation, but what is it that we don't know that other people do know that is never going to get to us? I don't know. I don't know if I explained that well at all, but I think there's a lot more going on that we will not ever like understand unless we were directly like we were a part of that whole, like unless we were part of government, there's things going on that we won't know about. So I'm curious, that's what I meant, where I'm curious, like at what point does freedom of speech stop? Like we're not allowed to say certain things. I'm allowed to be harassed on Twitter for being a Trump supporter, but there's certain things that are going to be censored, but not people making comments about me because I liked Trump. So that's my concern is, especially too after this, I've gotten a lot more messages, like from other people. I don't care if people want to ask questions and such. Like it doesn't matter to me. Like I'll gladly answer questions. I want everyone to feel comfortable talking to me about this. But I don't think that there will be an improvement of people thinking, let's kind of all come together, let's all work together. I think it's very like left side and right side. So I don't know if there's like going to be a solution at all.
Okay, so like as far as I want to ask you, like what information, do you think is being hidden from not just journalists but the public? Because I feel like every election official in every state has been pretty open about their election process, even as far as allowing people to view the counting process, unless you're talking about something else. But as far as like this election goes, and as far as, I don't know what you mean by, censoring, other than, just halting the sending of misinformation of tweets. But I want you to clarify what you mean by that.
I think I just meant like in general. I mean, I know that's what I meant. I meant just in general. I think that there's a lot more that goes on than like we will see. Like we will never all know everything that goes on with politics. And I know like doing research, there's a lot of things that a lot of the reason I like the things that Donald Trump has done is because I hear one thing about his plan for something, but then when I actually like go do more research on it, I hear a lot more about it. And so I think that's kind of the case with like that's been going on for like, I mean, even the whole like attempt to impeach, I think that's kind of just a lot of the information we get. It's like, who are we allowed to believe at this point?
Okay, I think I get what your concern was. Just like the desire for more transparency between legislation and what is communicated to the public, I guess.
Yeah, I actually do want to hop on that because I kind of have like a like sort of agreement there, where I do think like if you see like on a lot of like news websites, they will say like, oh, like there's no evidence of voter fraud, and for the most part, like I think we do take their words for them like for that, because like a lot of credible like news organizations make that claim. But I do agree, like there is a little bit of lack of transparency in like the process that goes into like, oh, like what do we choose to censor, what do we choose to flag, like, and what do we choose to like do when like people make voter fraud. Like I'm gonna be honest, like maybe I haven't looked deeply into it enough, but I don't know what they do exactly to say, oh, we have no evidence of voter fraud. So
Okay.
like
Okay, we're gonna
kind of like understand.
Okay, just to not let that slide right now, like I want us to stress for ourselves, and as like a student run award-winning publication, we can't run along with such conspiracy theories like that. I just feel like it undermines the integrity of the election. Just like if you want to look into what goes on in these polling places or in these ballot counting places, like you could go and call your representative, or you can call the election county official and figure it out. So like I hate when I know it seems like there's this, opaque wall and there's like a gatekeeper of the news media that seems to control what goes out to the public. And I don't want you guys, especially us as SAC media, to run with that. Okay.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
So I need to go back to what Katie was saying on how conservatives feel that this election was an election your freedoms were on the line. Yeah, that was partially right. The whole idea of Black people being killed by law enforcement was on the line. The continuation of that. What was on the line was the rights of LGBTQ people. Since that this president who um, was too much of a chicken to serve in war himself has banned trans people from being in the military. And then there's the rights of Muslims due to his Muslim ban. Your rights were not on the line, Katie. It was the freedoms of the people I have just mentioned. And also, you want to talk about transparency? Well, maybe if this president didn't lie to us thousands of times, maybe we would actually know what he was telling us, so we could better understand him. And as long as you talking about voter fraud, there was absolutely no voter fraud. You want to talk about the fraud that was happening during this election? We had Republicans put unofficial ballot boxes in California. We had Republicans make sure that Pennsylvania couldn't count their mail-in ballots until 7 a.m. on election day. That was the kind of fraud that was happening. Also, there was a case in Arizona where they were attempting to throw out ballots with Sharpie on them when it clearly said that Sharpie was the best way to mark your vote on that ballot. So that was the kind of fraud that was happening during this election. Let's not talk about voter fraud.
Can I just respond real quick and say I never mentioned anything about voter fraud, and that was exactly what I was talking about. Is my opinion didn't matter because Greg's was more important. So that was the exact type of lack of freedom that I was talking about when I mentioned freedom of speech.
You want to talk about freedom of speech when you had peaceful protesters being attacked by military personnel sent by the president?
Okay, let's give it to Jesse.
Yeah, so if I could just answer, you asked Katie, what she was expecting out of this new presidency. So I'd like to answer that and just comment a little bit about Katie mentioning about censorship. Yes, they are labeling the president's speech as false or misleading. However, conservatives and the Republicans that voted for him don't seem to care because his posts have still been receiving engagement. They've still been getting the retweets. According to articles by Forbes, which I'm actually looking at right now, there was 874,000 interactions regarding ballot corruption. And this was just posted today. So again, it doesn't seem to matter. And those posts were labeled as false or meaning that it's not affecting his hits or his views. And as far as what I'm expecting from this presidency, like I just said earlier, I'm just expecting Joe Biden to lower the temperature, like he said multiple times. I'm looking for him to unite Americans, as he said multiple times. We're not red or blue states. We're all Americans. And that's what I'm really looking forward to for these next 4 years. I'm hoping that the country unites and that we're able to have conversations where we can all meet and see our differences out.
Also, I kind of want to make one distinction when Katie, you mentioned like that Trump gets censored, but technically, like when you can still see all of Trump's posts that are flagged as untrue or like misinformed. So to consider it censorship, I think is a little bit of a stretch, just because again, like you can see everything he posts, whether or not like Twitter and like reliable sources believe it to be true or not. So I don't think you can like ever consider that censorship. And the other thing, like I wanted to mention, like I do think that like on the internet, like people can be pretty awful. Like I'm not gonna deny it. But at the same time, like to say like, oh, you're not allowed to say certain things on the internet is like wrong, because like you still say them. And I really feel for you when the reaction that you get is not kind to you, but I still wouldn't consider that a form of censorship either, because again, your voice is still getting out to where you want it to be.
And I mean, I totally understand our First Amendment rights. At what point do our leaders need to be factual with the information that they're providing the public and the people that they serve? I mean, we elected these people in office not to lie to us or to give us misleading information. And so I think that's like the vital distinction. But it's a very interesting topic, because even with political ads that get, you know, millions of dollars in funding, a lot of the times they can be false or misleading, yet they're still allowed to be published on TV or ran on TV. So it's a really interesting conversation as to where the censorship stops, but I really don't see them flagging his tweets affecting his views like we just said right now. So I totally agree with that there, Isaac.
And just going back to the lying thing, go to your work. If you were to lie to your boss, what would happen? You'd get fired. We should probably hold our leaders to that standard too.
So I want to leave this last thing to Katie again, because I want us to understand each other in this way. But at the same time, I don't want us to, give in to spreading misinformation at the same time, because I think we are held to a better standard than that. So, Katie, what do you see, whether it's your community or other Trump supporters? Do you acknowledge Biden's victory? And if not, why not?
So I mean, if you see, I've tried to have this conversation with multiple people at this point, but I feel like unless you are willing to see it from any other perspective, there's not really a point in me trying to answer that.
Well, it's a yes or no question. Like, do you see him as being the next leader of this country on January 20th?
I mean, I want to wait to see before I answer this.
Do you mean with like the lawsuits and stuff like that?
Yes, I know that the official electoral count is like December 14th or something. So we'll see what happens then.
Do you not think that the official electoral delegates will vote in that way that the states had, the citizens had voted for, because they represent?
I'm not sure. That's why I said I wanted to wait and see like what's gonna happen when everything's like finalized.
Well, if I could just comment real quick on something that you said, I think that if the Electoral College were to make some strange decision, because hey, it has happened before where you can win the popular vote and still lose the electoral. If we were to get some faithless electors like that, I do think that the country, of course, would be very upset. I mean, but again, the margins of victory were literally like half the country is voting for Trump and the other half didn't. There's a little higher than half that didn't. So I really think that these next few months are going to be important for the history and the welfare of our country. But at the same time, I don't think that we're going to have faithless electors. We shouldn't. That should not be happening at all. But I could see why Katie may say that, because we do have some politicians who do some strange things. Dare I say some corrupt politicians. But yes, if we were to have some faithless electors, I'm telling you right now that we would have a very upset country if that were to happen.
That's it. All right. I think, are we good?
Yeah. And thank you for listening to Digestible Discourse. We will see you soon whenever we are posted.
Make sure to visit our website, sac.media, to stay informed and up to date with all of the latest campus news at Mount Sac.
Bye, y'all.